Stephanie Ando, welcome to the Tokyo Living Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me and having me on. I'm looking forward to it. And it's nice to uh, meet you face to face after we've been chatting on Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Perhaps for the listeners and viewers, if you can just start by giving a little bit of background on yourself.
Yeah, okay. So as I was introduced, my name is Stephanie Ando. I'm a South African. I came to Japan 20 years ago. Just I graduated from university, and at that time I wanted to become a journalist. So my plan was to come to Japan on a gap year and make some money and then go back home and get my master's in journalism. I came when I arrived in Japan. Coincidentally, my neighbor was studying Aikido, and he introduced me to my teacher, and I fell in love with it from the first day that I came to watch a class, and I just loved it immediately. And I started training twice a week, and then that wasn't enough. I felt it wasn't enough. I wanted to train more, so I moved closer to the dojo, and then I realized that I really wanted to take Aikido back home to South Africa. That I felt that the philosophy of Aikido would be very beneficial to South Africa with our history. I won't go too deeply into the history, but obviously the history of South Africa with apartheid and the problems that we still have from that. So I wanted to get my instructor's license. So I quit my job teaching English to train full time at the dojo, and so my gap years just kind of extended into 20. And I still haven't gone home yet. So then I got married here, and I have two kids with my husband. So I'm pretty settled here, but hopefully we do have an affiliated dojo in South Africa, and I'm hoping eventually we'll still be able to expand there. So now I teach full time at the dojo, and I manage our website, and I manage our social media. And then we get a lot of students coming from overseas to train. Yeah. So I also manage that. I manage people if they need visas. I help them get visas.
Okay.
When they're here, I help them settle in. We have facilities at our dojo for people to stay and train here. So those are kind of all my duties at the moment. Yes.
Oh. Just going back a few steps. So when you saw that first class of Aikido and you fell in love with it, what was it about it that drew you to it?
So I watched the class, and in the beginning, everybody sits down, they line up and says it for the first 5 minutes. And just from the back, just seeing everybody lined up, in the white training uniforms, with very good posture. For some reason, I don't know, that was my first impression. And then after that, so then the teacher got up and he demonstrated a technique, and it was we have techniques where you pivot, and he was wearing the hakama, which is like the long skirt pants kind of thing. And he did this beautiful pivoting technique. And I don't know why. I thought, I really want to know more about what he's doing and what it all is all about. And then the more I trained and the more I learned about it, kind of the deeper the kind of spiritual and philosophical side gets. So I was just hooked from there, from the very beginning.
Yeah. And is that as the fascination, so you talk about getting more into the spiritual and philosophical side of it, and has that sort of continued to be sort of the focus for you? So for me, for example, when I got into karate, I was very young. I'd watch movies and wanted to become Van Damme, so I could walk into a room of bad guys, Van Damme, Bruce Lee, and I wanted to, and Steven Seagal actually, who's
okay,
we can maybe talk about him if you want, or not. But yeah, so it was all about sort of being this sort of mystical fighter. As I got more into it, I got into the sports side, and probably for the best part of 20 years for me, karate was primarily a sport. I wasn't really so much into the philosophical side per se, and I wasn't even so much into the self-defense side. I was an athlete, and that's how I saw it. And then after retiring, I sort of circled back a little bit to the point where now I'm actually thinking back the other, almost going full circle. And now for me, I'm focusing more on the actual fighting side of it. Have you gone through ebbs and flows where you've gotten different things out of Aikido and you've had different focuses throughout the journey?
Oh, absolutely, for sure. So in the beginning, I think that So when I was at university, and I don't know if you have the same thing, we call it like the freshman six, or so whatever you put on weight in your first year at university. And
I think there was a much cruder term for it where I went to university, but anyway.
Okay, so kind of a universal thing. And I had started going to gym and started training at the gym, and I had a very good personal trainer then, and he kind of, although he helped out with the basically the physical side, like the very practical, so many sets of this, so many reps doing this exercise, he also emphasized that the most important thing for him was that you enjoyed the body in motion, that you enjoyed the exercise. It wasn't only about losing weight, but it was very much so, even just that it was kind of the spiritual side. So when I started Aikido, I felt that it was kind of those two things had come together again, not just doing it. So it was challenging physically, and it was challenging mentally, because you had to remember all these movements. And then slowly, little by little, then the instructor started to kind of introduce the more spiritual side of it. So I think there's definitely, you go through phases, and I think phases, and you've got to keep the balance. Yeah. Because specifically, I think Aikido it can get too much to the spiritual side, and then it's useless and it's pointless as a martial art, or as a form of self-defense. So you've got to always be keeping that balance, and how those different aspects can work together.
And I know within karate there's thousands of different schools and styles, and there are similarities, but there's vast differences as well. Perhaps if you sort of talk about your school of Aikido and the history, and how it might differ from other types of Aikido that people may have seen or practiced.
Okay, so Aikido itself was first created by the teacher we call Ueshiba Morihei Sensei. We call him O Sensei, and he mixed together various kinds of martial arts, and then he created old Japanese martial arts that he'd studied, and he kind of fused them all together to create Aikido. And one of his students was Gozo Shioda, and Gozo Shioda trained with Ueshiba Sensei before World War II. Ueshiba Sensei's style changed a lot after World War II, became a lot more flowing, a lot more circular, a lot more focused on the spiritual side. And then Shioda Sensei created the Yoshinkan style, which is the style that we do. And it's generally known as like the hard style of Aikido. It's still much more focused on effective techniques and harder training. And the Tokyo Riot Police train with the Yoshinkan. They have to do an intensive course at the Yoshinkan. So it's kind of again, Ueshiba Sensei's pre-war style, where he was still training very hard, very physically, was very focused on the physical, maybe technical side of it. Yeah. So the Yoshinkan style has a much more set syllabus for training and learning and studying. So it's kind of what is more basic syllabus, I think, as opposed to the Aikikai style, which is the style that is still led by Ueshiba Sensei's family.
Yes, so And when you say more of a hard style, what do you actually mean by that? In that the techniques are less sort of flowing, less circular, more direct, or what, maybe give an example of a sort of a technique that.
So we it's kind of like the thing that we use the most to describe it is writing. So when you're learning to write, or you're learning to do calligraphy, first you do a line, and then you do two lines, and then eventually you do a letter, and put the words together, and eventually you can do calligraphy. But so the Aikikai style kind of goes straight for the very loose, very flowing style. Yoshinkan, we work very carefully through the very set first you do the line, and then you do the basic letters, and then you do calligraphy, and then you can do the more kind of flowing style. But then I think a lot of people get stuck. Maybe they get stuck in the very set. It's once you've started, you learn doing this, then it's harder to kind of loosen up and do the more flowing style. As an example, I guess could use that. So we have basic movements, 6 basic movements that we do, and we repeat those repeatedly until you can kind of, and then you like Lego building blocks, you build those into a technique, and then you can go into the more advanced techniques.
Interesting. And so after you started, how long was it for you to, say, obtain a black belt, and how long was it before you started teaching? And I guess in that time teaching, what sort of things have you learned from the actual teaching process, and maybe touch on, so you obviously have a lot of foreigners in the dojo. Given that your dojo sort of caters for foreigners, are there any sort of differences in the teaching styles? Because I know, the way that karate is taught in the West is very different to Japan. Do you sort of keep it very Japanese and traditional as an experience for the students, or do you try and sort of internationalize it a little bit?
So I started from when I started until I got my black belt, it maybe 2 years, but that would be training every day and several classes a day. So if you're just doing 1 class or 2 classes a week, it'll take you a little bit longer probably. And then also I had by that time quit my job, so I did at that time we offered the dojo had an intensive course kind of geared at training instructors and training full-time students. So I kind of did that very intensive, very set, going from the very, very beginning, working up to a syllabus. So maybe 2 years to black belt. And then after that, I wouldn't have my own classes, but I would be helping out teaching the kids or helping out in classes, working with white belts. And then from there, so maybe 3 years to then having my own classes. And at that time, I would be traveling and teaching around in Saitama and Chiba and Tokyo. So about 3 years to teaching. What is the teaching? It's still a process, and then also I had a big gap in the middle because I had when I stopped to have my kids, so a big gap in the middle, and it's been much harder coming back after that, I think, than it was in the beginning. For a lot of reasons. So teaching, I think the hardest part about teaching for me is thinking about how to make it as easy as possible for the students to understand. And then if they're not understanding, is that because my Japanese is not good enough, or my explanation is not good enough? So you really have to know your techniques backwards to be able to explain it, and then see where the students are not getting it, and then how can you fix that for them, make so that a technique is effective. And how you can apply your own, but then maybe your own experience doesn't apply to what they're struggling with. So
I think that with any sort of thing that you're going to teach, having to teach something will force you to learn it to a different degree of thoroughness. And having to teach something like that, it forces you to try to see the content that you're teaching in different lights and different ways, because what you say, what you experience with a certain movement might be completely different to what someone else experiences, so you need to sort of put it in their shoes, and I think that's a constant learning experience, the actual act of teaching itself, for anyone who instructs, but especially with martial arts.
And then so we haven't had any students coming overseas, obviously, since the pandemic started. So we're looking forward to when we can open up again and get more visitors. We don't change at all, really, to
Yeah.
accommodate people coming from overseas. They have to just fit in, and they have to
Yeah.
they have to just deal with whatever. I think for most foreigners coming to train with us, the seated techniques are the hardest part. We do a lot of techniques seated in Seiza.
Yep.
And yeah, I think they struggle. A lot of people struggle with that mostly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, because the all the techniques in Aikido, they come from, sword techniques, and obviously a long time ago in Japan, everybody was the lifestyle was in Seiza. So at that, you have to be able to do techniques from a seated position. So obviously that doesn't apply so much now, but we still train a lot of seated techniques to develop your lower body flexibility and strength. And I think people coming from overseas, they don't do that so much, maybe in dojo outside Japan. So yeah. So but people coming, to train here, they stay upstairs, and they are expected to kind of fit in as much as possible into the dojo lifestyle.
Yeah.
They Tuesday to Friday we do the 6 a.m. class, so they have to get up early to do that class every day.
Yeah.
They're expected, to clean, do cleaning.
And how long do they typically stay for, the people that come in from overseas?
So from 2 weeks to a month.
Yeah.
We've had people for up to 3 months. We've had people stay for a year.
Yeah. Wow.
So whatever people can manage to fit into their lifestyles, we can accommodate that.
Yeah. And do you have sort of local Japanese instructors or students stay in as Uchideshi as well?
No, we don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do have people from inside Japan. They come and they stay for a day or two, but not so much. Especially now with the pandemic, we weren't accepting applications for that. So
sure. And how do people find out? I mean, do you have a large sort of international online presence? And obviously, you're in Sensei there is quite famous. So you just get a lot of applications through there, or through affiliated schools, or how does
so we have Ryu World Aikido Federation, which is for dojos that are affiliated with us. And because my husband studied directly with Shioda Sensei for 14 years, he trained as his apprentice. So he's already really very well known from that, obviously. And we get it. So people want to come and train. I think from our website, we have, and our Instagram or our social media, we have quite a strong social media presence, I think.
Yep.
And I work very hard on that to maintain that. And to try and what my husband is, what he's teaching, to try and share that with everybody, try and make it easy to understand for everybody. That's part of my job, I think.
If you were to compare Aikido to other forms of physical activity or even other martial arts, what do you think are the main advantages to people practicing Aikido?
So, as I said, the main thing about Aikido that makes it different, I think, from other martial arts is that we don't have competitions and there's no fights. So when you do a technique, you do it with a partner and you work together, taking turns to be the one who does the technique and one who receives the technique, called uke. So it's very cooperative. You have to work together, and doing both sides helps you to understand the technique better, I think. So, and I think, that's one of the reasons why I felt that Aikido would be so good to take back to South Africa, is because doing that, taking turns to do the different roles, really helps you to be more flexible. I think mentally more flexible, to be able to see the other person's point of view, and to be able to so there's no competitions. So Shite and Uke both have to be happy and both have to be satisfied.
Yeah.
They're training. And so not just the one who wins is going to be happy and the one who loses is going to be sad. You have to be cooperative so that both people win, if that makes any sense. And I really felt that would be that the ability, and I feel myself just doing Aikido for so long, it's helped me as a parent, if that makes any sense, helped our marriage as a relationship, I think, other relationships as well. especially as a parent.
Yeah.
Not just being like my way is the only way or my way is the right way, is learning to be more flexible and willing to see other people's points of view, which is one of the things that I really liked about it and I wanted to take home. So I think that's one of the main differences. And how, we say you can talk about the spiritual side and it kind of gets all esoteric, but specifically that I think is the main thing, that you take turns and you have to cooperate and you have to work together, is one of the most important points, I think, in Aikido.
Yeah, yeah. I'd also be interested to sort of hear your thoughts on women in martial arts, because obviously martial arts has traditionally been sort of a male dominated area of study, and particularly in Japan. How have you seen that in your experience?
So specifically in our like in my case as well, I trained up to a certain point and I got to a certain level, and then I got married, and then I had kids, and so I had to stop training obviously during that time, and then I slowly started to come back to training. And then I've been very lucky because obviously my husband is very supportive. We live in the dojo, so it's much easier in terms of childcare. He's here all the time, so if he's teaching, I can watch the kids, and if I'm teaching, he can watch the kids. So it's been much easier for me. I've had that support, but for other women, I think to come back after maybe having children, try and get back into the, I'm calling it the workforce, but so a lot of the guys that I started with and we trained and we came up together. So I stopped for a bit and then they carried on training. So they advanced not only in terms of rank, a Dan rank, but also in terms of moving up in the organization and teaching experience. So if you stop teaching, I think you lose, as you said, it's a constant process. So if you stop for a long time, then you have to go back and start from zero. So I was kind of starting from zero again. So I was a lot behind people, guys that I had been started with or been at the same level with. So now if you look at if we do events like organize seminars, all the teachers are male teachers. There's very few women teachers. If you look at seminars that are being held overseas or events that are being held overseas, very few women, highly ranked women instructors or highly ranked within the organization. So I think that's the main thing that I'm seeing. And I've had to be so noisy about it. I've had to be like, why are there no women? And then, the dojo, or we also have a federation in Japan for all our affiliated dojos, and they'll hold events and I'll have to be like, why haven't you asked me to teach? Why are there no women teaching? And I've had to be so noisy about that. And then you feel like, oh, why am I like pushing myself forward like this? So it's slowly changing. As I said, again, my husband has been very supportive, and he understands that, if there's no highly ranked female teachers or women, then little girls, if they don't see or be, I want to be like that too. They've got no role models to look up to.
Sure.
So I've had to work quite hard at that, I think.
Yeah. And what has been the reaction to the noise that you try to bring up?
So as I said, my husband has been very, very supportive, and he so that's the main thing. So within our dojo and within our affiliated dojos, it's people have kind of not been too what's the word? Not being too obstructive. No, not what's the word?
Yeah.
They haven't been against it too much. But I maybe things that I don't hear or that I haven't heard. I don't know. I don't know what the response is outside of our little circle. Yeah, that makes
and
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess your gut instinct as to why you don't see more women, teaching at these seminars or involved in general. Do you see that it filtered? Like, if you were to look at a class of lower level students, would there be a more even spread of gender, and then that sort of filters out as you get higher through the ranks? Or
Yes, because I mean, if you look at our classes on a daily basis, the morning or the mid-morning classes are mostly women. And in the evening classes more 50-50. We have a lot of students, so yeah, it definitely drops the higher that you get. And as I said, I think it's because it's hard to get back in after if you've had to stop for to have kids or whatever. And also I feel like that there's like for women there's kind of, so a lot of women, but you've got to do a very accepted pretty style of Aikido. Maybe not such a hard, maybe not such a hard techniques or effective techniques. You've got to do pretty flowing techniques. Maybe that gets boring for women or something like that.
And within the techniques themselves, so in my martial arts experience, things like full contact karate and now BJJ, they're styles where strength and size play a fairly large part. Aikido has this reputation of being, I guess, more of a softer style where you're using a lot more of your opponent's strength and size against them. Do you feel like there's less of a disadvantage to a potentially smaller, less physically strong female practitioner in comparison to some of these harder styles? Or what are your thoughts on
that? It's hard because so my husband, as I say, he's a small guy. So from his experience, and in a way, like, smaller is better. It's kind of easy to do some of the techniques if you actually are smaller. But they are, it is still, there's one guy that I train with regularly, and he's a very big guy, and I would say he's about 90 kilograms, and it is harder to do the technique, to get the techniques to work on him. Just there's techniques we do where we kind of move like this, so we kind of lift them up like this, and to be supporting him up like that, it does. I would say even in Aikido, there is a big disadvantage. But then that's where the role of uke comes in. The uke has to not be heavy and kind of try to be light and be cooperative. So there's that as well. But then I think in a real situation, it's not so much strength so much as there's speed. So if you're smaller and faster, maybe that's an advantage too.
Well, I guess sort of starting to wrap up a little bit now, are there any other sort of thoughts on your 20 years in this art in Japan that you'd like to share with the listeners?
So obviously, I would just say that it's taken me 20 years to get to this point, but I do feel that I'm at a point now where I'm the strongest that I've ever been, not in terms of like physical strength, but the strongest that I've ever been in terms of what my body can do, the movements, the techniques. I'm getting there's a lot of posts on my social media that people are like, oh, I'm in my 40s now, and really your knees do start to creak, and my knees are like that. But I do feel that I'm the fittest that I've ever been, the strongest in terms of like stamina, maybe. So I really do recommend Aikido for that it's, you do everything at your own pace, and you can push yourself as much as you want to push yourself. So it's something that you can do for as long as you want it. As you get older, you can still do it and still enjoy it. And it really does build we say a natural body, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So you're not, forcing, building any kind of impossible muscle mass or anything like that. It's just a natural body that in your daily life is fit and healthy, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something that you can do with your kids. We have classes where parents can train at the same time as their kids.
Okay.
So it's something that you can do with your family. And I really do feel that it has enriched my life in my work and in interpersonal relationships. It's wonderful for all of those things.
Yeah. And you brought up kids. How old are your kids, and do they train?
Yeah, so my kids, one is 12, and one is 10. So he's in his first year junior high school, and the little one is in his 5th year elementary school. They both do Aikido. They just because it's here, so yeah. Just upstairs. So they do it, yeah, and it's great for kids as well. I think they learn to roll, and they learn to work with other kids. As I said before, you stay, okay, you change, so they learn to cooperate with other kids. The older kids have to help the lower kids, teach them. So I think it teaches kindness and compassion, which is one of the things that I love about it. Also physical fitness. They're going to be physically, they're going to run around, they're going to roll, they're going to take falls. So it's good for kids on all levels, I think. My older kid also does rugby. Yeah. So, and I think it maybe helps him with his rugby as well.
Yeah,
for sure. Tackling.
Yeah.
Taking tackles. So I do highly recommend it for anyone who wants to give it a try.
Fantastic. And so if people are looking to find out a little bit more about your dojo and your organization, first of all, whereabouts is your dojo located?
So we are our headquarters dojo is located in Urayasu, which is mostly famous for, we have Disneyland. It's just down the road. Okay.
Yep.
But so we 20 minutes on the train from Tokyo, so it's easily accessible. But we do have branch dojos all around the country. So if you check out our homepage, there's a button that says find a dojo near you, and if you go there, you can see the dojo closest to you. We have lots of affiliate dojos. Yeah,
fantastic.
And like I said, classes all day, every day except Monday, classes all day for all ages, all levels. So and you can come and try a class anytime.
Great. And we'll put the links to your website and socials in the show notes. But if you can, for those that can't be bothered checking that out, what did you know your homepage and social handles?
So our homepage address is aikidoryu.or.jp. If you Google Aikido Ryu, you'll probably get it. And same on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Aikido Ryu is all of us. Aikido Ryu. But you need to spell it out.
That's AIKIDORURYU.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Stephanie, thanks very much for coming on. It's always great to chat to other foreigners that have sort of followed a martial arts journey in Japan, and it was great to hear your story. And
I'm sorry, I don't actually have a chance to speak so much in English, so maybe I didn't express myself as well as I'd like to. I hope I did. But thanks for having me on. And if anyone has any questions or would like to get hold of us, they can get hold of us directly.
Fantastic.
And you too, if you ever want to try, it might give you some pointers for helping out in your BJJ.
Absolutely, and I'd love to.
Anytime.
That's good. All right. Well, thanks again, Stephanie, and all the best with the dojo and with the business.
Thank you. You too. And it was nice to chat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.